What's up, guys? Welcome back to Mystery Files, the home of the darkest mysteries and the most chilling true crime stories. If you love diving into the minds of history's most terrifying killers, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with which case you want me to cover next. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Alright, today we're diving into the story of one of the most horrifying serial killers you've probably never even heard of. Forget Ted Bundy. Forget Jeffrey Dahmer. Forget John Wayne Gacy. Those names are infamous in America, but today's subject makes them look like small-time killers in comparison. I'm talking about Pedro Lopez, also known as the Monster of the Andes. This man is believed to have murdered over 300 young girls across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru in the 1970s and early 1980s. Yeah, 300. And the craziest part? He served less than 20 years in prison, and then he just disappeared. So grab a drink, sit back, and prepare yourself, because this story is going to haunt you. Early life of Pedro López. Pedro López was born in 1948 in Colombia, in a city called Santa Isabel. From the very beginning, his life was surrounded by chaos, poverty, and violence. His father was actually murdered before Pedro was even born, and his mother was reportedly abusive. At a very young age, Pedro ran away from home and started living on the streets. And here's where things got even darker. On the streets of Bogotá, López was sexually abused, beaten, and forced into survival situations that shaped his already fragile mind. By the time he was a teenager, he had already developed disturbing tendencies. He was arrested multiple times for petty crimes and eventually sent to jail, where he claimed he was assaulted again. That, according to him, sealed his hatred for humanity. The first murders. López later admitted that his killing spree began in 1970, when he was in Peru. He targeted the most vulnerable victims, little girls between the ages of 8 and 12. He would lure them away by offering small gifts or pretending to need help, and then he would take them to secluded areas where he committed his horrific acts. And tragically, nobody noticed at first. These were poor communities where missing children were often ignored or blamed on poverty, migration, or even natural disasters. And López used that to his advantage. The scale of his crimes. Now here's where it gets insane. Pedro López didn't stop at a few murders. His confession and later investigations revealed he might have killed more than 300 girls. He once chillingly said in an interview, "I like the girls in Ecuador the most. They are more gentle and trusting, easier to kill." Yeah, that's a direct quote. Let that sink in. He claimed that at one point he was killing 3 girls a week. That's an unimaginable number, and if it's even half true, it makes him one of the most prolific serial killers in history. How he got caught. So how did the monster of the Andes finally get caught? In 1980, in Ecuador, Pedro was caught trying to abduct a little girl from a marketplace. Thankfully, her mother and other townspeople noticed, and they grabbed him. He was almost lynched on the spot. Police intervened and arrested him. And here's the shocking part. Once in custody, López didn't hold back. He confessed to murdering hundreds of girls. He even led police to mass graves where they discovered dozens of bodies. Ecuadorian police officially linked him to at least 110 confirmed murders, but he insisted the real number was closer to 300. The trial and prison sentence. You'd think a man who admitted to killing hundreds of children would spend the rest of his life locked up, right? Wrong. In 1981, López was convicted in Ecuador, not for 300 murders, but for just 110 confirmed ones. And his sentence? Only 16 years in prison. That was the maximum penalty allowed in Ecuador at the time. 16 years, for killing over 100 kids. He served his time, and in 1994, he was released. But instead of being free immediately, he was deported back to Colombia. Authorities there declared him insane, and he was committed to a psychiatric hospital. And get this, he was released from that hospital just a few years later, on the condition that he had to check in with police regularly. But guess what? He disappeared. Where is Pedro López now? And this is the most chilling part of the entire story. Nobody knows where Pedro López is today. Some say he vanished into Colombia's underworld. Others fear he may have continued killing in silence. Interpol actually issued a warrant for him in the early 2000s, but as of today, his whereabouts remain a mystery. Think about that for a second. A man who confessed to killing 300 children might still be out there. Why isn't he more famous? Now, you might be wondering, why isn't Pedro Lopez as famous as Dahmer or Bundy? The answer is simple: media coverage. Most of his crimes took place in poor rural areas of South America, where international media didn't really pay attention. Meanwhile, Dahmer and Bundy's crimes happened in the US, where press coverage was massive and constant. But if we're talking purely about numbers and brutality, Pedro Lopez is arguably one of the most terrifying serial killers of all time. Final thoughts. So, what do we take away from this story? Pedro Lopez's life shows us how a cycle of abuse, poverty, and neglect can sometimes create true monsters. But it also shows how weak justice systems can fail to protect society. The idea that this man might still be walking free today is one of the scariest thoughts imaginable. Call to action. If you made it this far into the video, you're a real one. Smash that like button if you're into true crime content like this, and don't forget to subscribe, because I've got way more stories like this coming. Drop a comment down below. Do you think Pedro Lopez is still alive and out there killing? Or did his crimes finally come to an end? I'll be reading and replying to as many comments as I can. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.